Roughly 1.5 billion people now speak English. It is the language of international commerce, digital infrastructure, and global media. But if you wind the clock back 1,500 years to the coast of Britain, the language simply does not exist. In the 5th century, Germanic tribes, the Angles, Saxons, and Jutes, migrated across the North Sea. Their arrival began the steady erasure of the Roman and Celtic dialects that had previously defined the island. This is the first written iteration of their speech, an alphabet of harsh, angular runic characters. They lack curves because they were designed to be scratched into wood and bone. The straight, slanted lines allowed writers to mark surfaces without splitting the natural grain. These crude, tribal inscriptions mark the absolute beginning of the English language. Old English functioned as a synthetic language. Grammatical meaning was carried by complex word endings, featuring 3 distinct genders and a system of 5 noun cases. This manuscript, written in dense insular script, appears entirely unrecognizable to a modern eye. Yet within this alien text lies the foundation of our modern vocabulary. The Germanic roots for our most essential concepts, house, water, and bread, are already visible here. Over the next millennium, this rigid Germanic dialect would shed nearly all its inflectional complexity to become the flexible global standard we recognize today. In the 800s, Viking longships brought Old English into direct contact with Old Norse. While the 2 languages shared similar roots, their complex word endings were different enough to hinder trade. To communicate, speakers began dropping those suffixes entirely, simplifying the grammar just to facilitate daily survival. This era also introduced a wave of Norse vocabulary that never left. Essential action words like take, sky, and husband became permanent fixtures of the English lexicon. This collision acted as a catalyst, stripping English of its rigid grammatical rules and leaving it leaner and more adaptable. The most significant shift arrived in 1066. The Norman conquest forcibly replaced the entire English ruling class with French-speaking elites. French became the language of law, the military, and the royal court, while English was relegated to the peasantry. This divide created a dual vocabulary. The peasantry used Germanic words for livestock, like cow and pig, but the aristocracy used French terms for the meat, beef, and pork. English absorbed over 10,000 French words, doubling its dictionary. With its word endings largely gone, the language transitioned into an analytical structure. Middle English now relied on a strict sequence of subject, verb, object to convey meaning. English survived the occupation by acting as a lexical sponge, absorbing the vocabulary of its conquerors while replacing its inflectional system with a rigid syntax. Between the 1400s and 1700s, English underwent the Great Vowel Shift. Speakers began pronouncing their vowels higher and further forward in the mouth, rapidly changing the sound of the language. In this Middle English translation of the Lord's Prayer, the spelling reflects the language in a state of transition. By the time we reach the 1611 translation, the vocabulary is largely recognizable, but the orthography remains inconsistent. While this massive phonetic shift was underway, William Caxton introduced the printing press to England. The press required standardization. This effectively locked medieval spellings into place on the page, even as the public's actual pronunciation continued to move toward a modern sound. This technological freeze is why modern English spelling remains so disconnected from its spoken form. With its grammar simplified and its vocabulary doubled, English was uniquely primed for global export. This 1886 map shows the reach of the British Empire. Along with the Industrial Revolution, this expansion pushed the language into every corner of the globe. Global trade routes introduced thousands of new foreign words, further expanding a lexicon already built on hybridity. English thrived globally because it is a language that lacks a central guard. It grew by consuming and integrating the cultures it encountered. A modern English sentence is a collection of historical layers: Germanic roots, Norse simplification, and French aristocratic influence. The language's evolution moved from historical colonialism to digital globalization. It's now shaped by a vast international network of users, communicating across light-speed data streams. English exists as a chaotic, open-source project, continuously revised by the 1.5 billion people who speak it.